The most feared Korean Mafia boss in Los Angeles was taking his fiancée to dinner when he saw his ex-wife crossing the intersection with two babies strapped to her chest. Kang Ji-hoon adjusted the platinum cufflinks on his custom Tom Ford suit as his armored black Maybach glided through the neon-lit streets of Koreatown. Three black SUVs trailed behind, his security detail always watching, always ready to kill on his command. The city lights reflected off the bulletproof windows, illuminating the woman beside him. Yuna Park, 28 years old, raven hair styled in perfect waves, diamond earrings worth more than most people's yearly salary, catching the light with every calculated turn of her head. She was everything his position demanded. Beautiful, connected to the Seoul cartels, politically useful. At 36, Ji-hoon had learned that power could purchase almost anything, including marriages that meant nothing beyond business. His engagement to Yuna was 4 months old, long enough to satisfy both crime families, short enough that he didn't have to pretend he felt anything beyond cold calculation. No love, no passion, no weakness, just an alliance wrapped in wedding plans. Father says the merger will give us complete control of the West Coast distribution, Yuna said, checking her reflection in a compact mirror. Our wedding will cement Seoul's approval for the expansion. Ji-hoon said nothing. His coal black eyes remained fixed on the road ahead, his mind already calculating tomorrow's weapons shipment from Busan. The traffic light turned red, the crosswalk filled with evening pedestrians. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, unaware that the man watching them from behind bulletproof glass had buried enemies in the desert with a single word. Ji-hoon watched them absently when something made his blood turn to ice. A woman was crossing the street. She moved carefully, protectively, carrying 2 infants against her chest in a worn baby carrier, twins bundled in faded blue and pink blankets. Her chestnut hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and exhaustion shadowed her face like bruises. She looked like she hadn't slept in months, even from a distance, even with her head down, even after 15 months of forcing himself to forget. Ji-hoon knew that walk, the gentle slope of her shoulders, the way she held her head, the quiet strength in every exhausted step. Maya Chen, his former wife, the woman he had divorced exactly 1 year and 3 months ago. The babies looked about 4 months old. The timing would be exactly right. Ji-hoon's hands that had never trembled holding a gun, shook against the leather armrest. The world outside seemed to slow as Maya paused mid-crosswalk. One of the babies began to fuss. She shifted them both, pressing a tender kiss to the crying infant's forehead, humming something soft and aching. The baby quieted immediately. She continued walking, disappearing into the crowd on the other side. Ji-hoon. Yuna's sharp voice cut through the fog in his mind. The light's green. Your driver is waiting. He blinked. Cars behind them were honking. His men were glancing back through rear-view mirrors, confused by his uncharacteristic hesitation. Ji-hoon, you look like you've seen a ghost, Yuna said, studying his face with cold curiosity. Do you know that woman? Ji-hoon forced his expression back to stone. No one important. But his mind was screaming. Had Maya been pregnant when he signed those divorce papers? The night he told her their marriage was over, that loving him would get her killed, that she didn't belong in his blood-soaked world. Had she been carrying his children? Had she known and chosen not to tell him? Or had she discovered it afterward, alone and abandoned, and made the decision to raise them without him? The questions multiplied, each one more devastating than the last. He had divorced her to protect her. He had convinced himself that walking away was noble, that a woman like Maya deserved sunshine instead of shadows, normalcy instead of looking over her shoulder every day. But now, seeing her with those babies, exhausted, struggling, but still standing, Ji-hoon realized something that cracked his carefully constructed world down the middle. She had given him children, a son and a daughter, and she had done it completely, utterly alone, while he sat in bulletproof cars beside a woman he didn't love, planning a wedding that meant nothing. Maya had been fighting to survive, fighting to keep their children alive, fighting battles he should have been there to fight beside her. One question echoed louder than his pounding heartbeat. What if the life he'd been so determined to protect her from was the only life worth living? If you felt something watching this, hit that like button and share this story with someone who believes in second chances. Subscribe because Ji-hoon's journey to redemption is just beginning. The luxury restaurant that night faded to a blur. Candlelight flickered on white tablecloths. Soft piano music drifted from the corner. Yuna talked about wedding invitations, about guest lists that included crime bosses from 3 countries. Ji-hoon heard her voice but couldn't process the words. His gaze kept sliding to the tall windows, facing the street where strangers walked through the Los Angeles night. He wondered where Maya was right now. Were the children warm enough? Were they sleeping? Ji-hoon, are you listening to me? Yuna set her wine glass down with a sharp click. I'm asking about, you decide. He cut her off, voice flat. Whatever you want. Yuna frowned. What's wrong with you tonight? Work, he lied. He wasn't thinking about work. He was thinking about Maya's exhausted eyes, about the way she had kissed that crying baby's forehead with a tenderness he'd never seen in anyone else, about how she had survived 15 months alone with 2 newborns while he drank expensive wine beside a woman he didn't love. When the motorcade finally dropped Yuna at her penthouse, Ji-hoon exhaled with relief. The car turned toward his estate in the Hollywood Hills, a fortress of glass and steel overlooking all of Los Angeles, like a throne over conquered territory. Ji-hoon stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, a glass of whiskey in his hand that he never drank. He only stared down at the glittering city, wondering where in that ocean of light Maya might be. The clock struck 2 a.m. Ji-hoon grabbed his phone and called Dae, his second in command. Boss? Dae's voice was alert despite the hour. 20 years of loyalty had taught him to wake instantly for Ji-hoon's calls. Find everything about Maya Chen, Ji-hoon said, his voice cold and final. Current address, job, financial situation, and those children. I want to know everything. Silence stretched too long. Dae? Boss. Dae hesitated in a way that made Ji-hoon's jaw tighten. There's something I should have told you a long time ago. Ji-hoon's heart clenched. Say it. Not over the phone. Dae exhaled heavily. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. When you read the file, you'll understand. What file? What do you know about her? 6 a.m., boss. Dae's voice dropped. And you should prepare yourself. The call ended. Ji-hoon hurled the phone onto the desk and braced both hands on the wood, head bowed. Dae knew something that had happened during the 15 months Ji-hoon had tried to forget Maya existed. He went to his bedroom but couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Maya at the crosswalk. The way she stopped mid-street when the baby cried. The way she hummed that lullaby, her voice soft as breath. The way the baby quieted the instant she held them close. Maya had always carried that kind of quiet miracle, the kind that made everything around her soften into peace. Even him, a man with blood on his hands and darkness in his soul, had once felt peace beside her, and he had thrown it away. Ji-hoon stared at the ceiling in the dark, one question drilling deeper into his mind. What had she been through when he wasn't there? At the same time, across the city, Maya Chen was climbing the stairs to the 4th floor of a decaying apartment building in Pico Union. One step at a time. There was no elevator. There never was in the places she could afford. In her arms, Ethan and Emma slept deeply, their soft breaths warming her neck. Each step felt weighted with exhaustion, her legs trembling. But she didn't stop. She never stopped. Stopping wasn't an option when 2 tiny lives depended entirely on her. The studio apartment was small, impossibly so, but clean. It smelled like fabric softener, and the warm glow of a thrift store lamp welcomed her home. Everything in this room had come from garage sales or secondhand stores. The faded futon, the scratched coffee table, the old crib she'd repainted white with her own hands. But to Maya, this was home. This was the only safe place she could give her children. She gently laid Ethan and Emma in the crib. The babies immediately found each other's hands in sleep, tiny fingers weaving together as if they understood all they truly had was each other. Maya stood there watching them, her chest tight with love and with pain she never allowed herself to show. 3 hours until she had to leave for the night shift. 3 hours to sleep, to eat, to prepare bottles for tomorrow. But first, she needed to shower, needed to wash baby clothes, needed to sterilize bottles. Maya's life was an endless chain of things that had to be done, and she'd been used to that for a long time. She sat on the edge of the futon, staring at nothing, and memories rushed in like a flood. She'd grown up in foster care after her parents died in a car accident when she was 5, bounced from home to home. Love was a luxury. Survival was the first lesson. At 18, she aged out of the system with nothing but a high school diploma and fierce determination. She worked 3 jobs to put herself through nursing school. Met Ji-hoon when she was 25 at a hospital fundraiser where he'd made a massive donation. Laundered money. She'd learn later. But that night, he just seemed like a successful businessman with sad eyes. 14 months of marriage were the happiest of her life. For the first time ever, Maya felt truly loved. Ji-hoon looked at her like she was his entire world. He told her he'd protect her, that no one would ever hurt her again. She believed him. She believed every word. Then, one morning, Ji-hoon sat across from her at breakfast, with eyes like winter, and said 3 words. "I want a divorce." No explanation. No chance to speak. Just divorce papers signed by his lawyers and a check for $2 million she never cashed. He walked out. She watched the door close. Felt like someone had torn her heart from her chest. 2 weeks later, she found out she was pregnant. She tried to find him, called his number, disconnected, went to his office. Security escorted her out. Wrote letters, no response. It was as if she'd never existed in his life at all. 8 months of pregnancy alone. Maya cried herself empty, then learned how not to cry anymore. She went into premature labor at 35 weeks, alone in the emergency room with no one to hold her hand. Ethan was born with underdeveloped lungs and spent 4 weeks in the NICU. Maya sat beside his incubator 18 hours a day, praying to a God she wasn't sure existed. Now, looking at her 2 children sleeping peacefully, Maya knew all the suffering had been worth it. She stood, eyes drifting to the faded ultrasound photo taped to the wall. 2 tiny shapes side by side. "I'll give you everything I never had," she whispered like a vow. An hour later, Maya left the babies with Mrs. Rodriguez, the 72-year-old neighbor, who was the only kind soul in her life. She kissed each child on the forehead, pulled on her thin jacket, and stepped into the darkness to begin her 12-hour shift at County General Hospital. She didn't see the black SUV parked across the street. She didn't know someone was watching her every step. She only knew that tonight she needed to earn enough money to pay for next week's formula. At exactly 6 a.m., Day walked into Ji-hoon's office with a thick file. Ji-hoon had been awake all night, still sitting in the chair by the window, the whiskey from last night untouched on the table. He didn't look at Day, only held out his hand. "Give it to me." Day set the file on the desk, then stepped back like a man bracing for an explosion. Ji-hoon opened the first page, and every line felt like a knife driving into his chest. Maya's current address, a studio apartment in Pico Union, one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Los Angeles. A building with no security, no elevator, a broken front door lock. Ji-hoon's jaw clenched. He flipped to the next page. Her current job, night shift nurse at County General Hospital. Salary, $48,000 a year. barely enough to survive in Los Angeles. She worked 12-hour nights, 6 days a week. While he lived in a mansion in the Hollywood Hills, she was working herself to death to raise their children. The next page made Ji-hoon stop breathing. Hospital debt, $94,000 from the delivery. $94,000. To him, that was one weapon shipment. To Maya, it was a lifetime of debt. Then he turned to the page with the children's information. The boy was named Ethan Ji-hoon Chen. The girl was named Emma Rose Chen. Ji-hoon went completely still. Ethan Ji-hoon Chen. She had given his name to their son. After everything he'd done to her, after abandoning her without explanation, Maya had still given his name to their son. Ji-hoon didn't know what he was supposed to feel. Moved, guilty, destroyed. Maybe all of it tangled into chaos he couldn't untangle. "Boss," Day spoke, voice lower than usual. "There's more." Ji-hoon lifted his eyes, signaling him to continue. Day drew a deep breath. She delivered early at 35 weeks, alone in the ER. No one beside her, no family, no friends, no one. Ji-hoon clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. The boy, Ethan, struggled from the moment he was born. Day continued, voice heavy. He spent 4 weeks in intensive care. The nurses said Maya refused to leave his side. She didn't eat, didn't sleep, just sat there praying he'd survive. Ji-hoon shot to his feet, the chair crashing backward. He turned his back to Day, braced both hands on the window frame, and bowed his head. His body shook as he tried to hold everything inside. "She had no one with her?" he asked, voice rough. "No one. She handled everything herself," Day answered, from pregnancy to delivery to raising the babies alone. Silence filled the room. Finally, Ji-hoon turned back, his eyes cold as winter, but his voice trembling. "Protect her 24/7. Watch every movement. Don't let her know. Someone's been on her since last night already, boss." Ji-hoon sat down and picked up the file again. He turned to the last page, a photograph of Maya taken from a distance. She was thinner than 15 months ago, deep shadows beneath her eyes, but still beautiful, the strength still there in her gaze. Ji-hoon touched the photograph, his finger tracing her face. "Why didn't you come to me?" he whispered. It was the question he didn't yet have an answer to. 3 days after Ji-hoon ordered Maya protected, his phone rang at midnight. Unknown number. Ji-hoon stared at the screen, instincts on high alert. He answered without a word. The voice on the other end made his blood turn to ice. "Kang Ji-hoon, it's been a long time. I know your secret now." Park Min-jae. The name slid into Ji-hoon's throat like a cold blade. Min-jae was the Korean Mafia boss who controlled the northern territories, the sworn enemy of the Kang family for 3 decades. The man who had threatened Ji-hoon 15 months ago, swearing he'd kill any woman who dared to love him. That was why Ji-hoon divorced Maya. That was why he shoved her out of his life without explanation. And now Min-jae was calling with triumph in his voice. "Why so quiet, Ji-hoon? Not happy to hear from me?" Min-jae sneered. "I'll admit, you hid it well. A woman and 2 children. How long did you think you could keep that buried?" Ji-hoon tightened his grip on the phone. He didn't answer, but silence was answer enough. "My men tailed your security detail," Min-jae continued like venom. "They're swarming around a miserable apartment building in Pico Union, and I wondered what could matter that much. Turns out it's a nurse with 2 babies. Twins who look exactly like you, Ji-hoon. Especially the boy." Rage flared in Ji-hoon's chest like fire. He wanted to tear Min-jae apart, but he didn't let emotion show. He was Kang Ji-hoon. He never let an enemy see weakness. "What do you want?" he asked, voice cold as ice. "Hand her over," Min-jae replied. "The woman and the children. If you don't, I'll take them myself, and I guarantee the way I take them won't be pleasant." Ji-hoon laughed, a hard, empty laugh with no humor. Min-jae listened carefully. If you or anyone in your crew touches even a single hair on their heads, I'll burn down everything you've built. I'll kill your family one by one, starting with the ones you love most. And when I get to you, I'll make sure you beg to die." Silence. Then Minjae laughed loudly. So Kang Ji-hoon finally has a weakness. "I've been waiting for this for 30 years. He paused. "I won't rush. I'll wait for the right moment. And when you least expect it, I'll take the most important thing you have, just like your father took from me." The call ended. Ji-hoon slammed the phone onto the desk and roared with fury, sweeping everything to the floor in a crash of glass and rage. Then he stopped, drew a breath, forced himself to calm. He grabbed the phone and called Day. Double the number of men protecting Maya, 24/7, no gaps, and prepare for war. Day took the order, but when the call ended, I-hoon knew it wasn't enough. Protection from a distance couldn't guarantee safety. Minjae was a snake. He'd find the smallest opening. Ji-hoon needed to get close to Maya. He needed to move her and the children somewhere he could control. But first, he needed to speak with her. That night, Ji-hoon drove his own car to County General Hospital, where Maya was working the night shift. He parked in the shadows, staring through the windshield at the brightly lit building. She was in there, working, trying to survive, not knowing danger was circling closer. And he sat here, bracing himself for the meeting he'd been running from for 15 months. Tonight, he'd see her again. Even if she screamed in his face or slapped him, he still had to see her, because this wasn't about him anymore. This was about the survival of the children he'd never once held. At 2 a.m., the hospital doors opened and Maya stepped outside. The 12-hour shift had drained her, but she still walked quickly toward the parking lot, wanting to get home before the babies woke. The lot was empty at this hour. Only a handful of cars scattered beneath weak yellow streetlights. Maya pulled her keys from her pocket and hurried toward her beat-up Toyota Corolla. Then she stopped. Someone was standing beside her car. A tall figure in a black suit, motionless in the shadows. Survival instinct made Maya react instantly. She yanked pepper spray from her coat pocket and raised it. "Don't move. I'll spray if you take one step." The man stepped into the light, and Maya felt her heart miss a beat. That face, those coal black eyes, those sharp, hard angles. She would never forget them. Ji-hoon. The name left her mouth cold as ice. The pepper spray was still raised, but her hands shook. Not from fear, from anger, from pain, from 15 months spent trying to erase this man. And now he was standing here, as if he had the right. "Maya," Ji-hoon said, his voice lower and rougher than she remembered. "I need to talk to you." Maya lowered the pepper spray, not because she trusted him, but because she knew if Ji-hoon wanted to hurt her, he would have done it long ago. She laughed bitterly. 15 months without a word. And now you want to talk?" Ji-hoon didn't answer immediately. He just stood there looking at her, his eyes holding something Maya didn't want to untangle. Then he spoke, voice strained. "I know about the children. I know they're mine." Maya felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. She'd known this day would come, but when it arrived, she still wasn't ready. She was silent, swallowing the pain rising in her chest. Then she looked straight into his eyes. "They're my children. You lost the right to call them yours the day you signed those divorce papers without even looking back." Each word was a bullet fired straight into Ji-hoon's heart. He didn't flinch. He stood there and took it because he knew he deserved it. "Maya, you're in danger," he said urgently. "Someone knows about you and the children. Someone very dangerous. I need to protect." "I don't need you to protect me." Maya cut him off, voice sharp as a blade. "I survived 15 months without you. I was pregnant alone, gave birth alone, raised them alone. I didn't need you then, and I sure as hell don't need you now." She turned her back, reaching for the car door. But Ji-hoon stepped forward and put his hand on the door, stopping her. "Maya, please." His voice sounded like a plea, a sound Maya had never heard from Kang Ji-hoon, the most powerful Korean mafia boss in Los Angeles. Let me explain. Give me one chance. Maya turned to face him, her eyes burning with anger and hurt. Explain. Explain what? That you threw me away like trash? That you vanished from my life without telling me why? That you left me to face everything alone while you lived your luxury life? She stopped, drew a breath, trying to steady the tremor in her voice. You have 5 minutes, right here, right now. Talk. Ji-hoon looked at her, and for the first time in 15 months, he felt a fragile thread of hope. She was giving him 5 minutes, more than he deserved. He took a deep breath. 15 months ago, Park Min-jae gave me a choice. I watched what he did to my brother's wife. He executed her without blinking. When he swore you were his next target, I panicked. I believed that by erasing myself from your life, I was erasing the target on your back. I thought walking away was the only way to keep you breathing. Scarlett stood there listening, but her silence wasn't cold anymore. It was boiling, and when Ji-hoon finished, she exploded. You thought. Her voice rang across the empty parking lot. You didn't give me the right to choose. You decided for me that I couldn't face danger. You decided how I should live my life. Do you have any idea how selfish that is? Ji-hoon tried to speak, but Maya didn't give him the chance. She stepped forward, her finger stabbing the center of his chest. I almost died giving birth alone. Did you know that? I delivered early at 35 weeks, alone in the ER. No one held my hand. No one told me it would be okay. Her voice started to shake, but she didn't stop. Ethan almost didn't make it, Ji-hoon. Your son had to fight for every breath, while I watched him through glass, terrified and alone, praying his tiny heart wouldn't stop beating. Ji-hoon felt like someone was crushing his heart. I didn't know you were pregnant, he said, voice rough. I looked for you, Ji-hoon. Maya cut him off. I looked for you. She put weight on every word. When I found out I was pregnant, I went to your office. Security dragged me out. I called you. Number disconnected. I wrote letters. No one answered. I even went to your estate, and the guards threw me out like a dog. She stopped, voice catching. I begged, Ji-hoon. I begged to see you. And I was thrown out as if I'd never existed in your life. Ji-hoon went numb. I didn't order that, he said, voice strangled. I swear, I didn't order anyone to block you. Maya stared at him, eyes red, but no tears fell. She'd cried herself empty long ago. Then who? Who decided I didn't deserve to meet the father of my children? Ji-hoon had no answer, but inside his mind, a name was rising. Day? I'm drowning in hospital bills I'll be paying off for the rest of my life, Maya continued, voice more tired now. I work nights because during the day, I have to care for the babies. I don't have family. I don't have friends. I don't have anyone except 2 children who depend completely on me. She looked down at her hands, roughened by work and too little sleep. There are nights I don't know if I'll have enough money for formula. There are nights I cry in the bathroom so the babies won't hear me. There are nights I want to give up. She lifted her head and looked straight into Ji-hoon's eyes. But I don't give up because Ethan and Emma need me, because I'm everything they have. Ji-hoon couldn't take it anymore. He dropped to his knees right in front of Maya, head bowed low, shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, he said, voice breaking. I know these words aren't enough. I know nothing can make up for what you went through. But I'm sorry. I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. I'm sorry for everything. Maya looked down at the man kneeling at her feet. Kang Ji-hoon, the most powerful Korean mafia boss in Los Angeles, was on his knees before her in a hospital parking lot, begging for forgiveness. Part of her wanted to forgive him. That part still loved him, still remembered the nights he held her and promised he'd protect her forever. But the rest of her, the part that had been cut too deep, couldn't forgive that easily. No, she said, voice cold. Not enough. Right. Then, Ji-hoon's phone vibrated. He stood, glanced at the screen. Die. What he heard made his face drain of color. Boss, Minjai is moving. His men are gathering near Pico Union. Looks like he's planning something tonight. Ji-hoon hung up and looked at Maya, urgency blazing in his eyes. You're in real danger. Not tomorrow, not next week. Tonight. He took her hand, and Maya didn't pull away. Let me get you and the children somewhere safe, just tonight. After that, if you want to throw me out, I'll go, I promise. Maya looked into his eyes and thought of Ethan and Emma sleeping in Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment. She couldn't gamble her babies' lives just to protect her pride. Okay, she whispered. Just tonight. 6 months later, sunlight poured through the tall windows of the house in Pacific Palisades, peaceful and safe, far from the shadow-soaked Mafia world Ji-hoon had lived in his whole life. The home wasn't as grand as his old estate, but it had a wide yard where the babies could play, a white fence wrapped around it, and birdsong every morning. It was the place Maya had dreamed of during lonely nights in that miserable studio. And now that dream was real. Ji-hoon had kept his promise. He shifted most operations into legitimate business, real estate, tech investments, clean energy. He still kept ties in the underworld because that was unavoidable for a man with the name Kang. But he no longer took part in the blood work. Day ran what remained, a way to repay what he'd done to Maya. Maya went back to work at County General. Day shift now, so she could be home every night. She loved her job and didn't want to give it up just because her life was comfortable. I don't want to be someone who depends on you, she told Ji-hoon. I want our children to see their mother has her own worth. Ji-hoon understood. He respected it. The biggest change was that Maya started therapy. She faced childhood wounds she'd buried for years. She spoke about foster care, about the years of loneliness, about the fear of abandonment, about the walls she'd built around her heart. Twice a week, Ji-hoon drove her to the therapist's office. He didn't go inside. This was her battle, but he always waited outside. Sometimes she came out with red eyes, and he simply held her in silence. On nights when nightmares came, he woke instantly and pulled her into his arms until dawn. And little by little, Maya grew stronger. Ethan and Emma were 10 months old now, growing fast, getting mischievous. Ethan could say dada and mama and no when he didn't like something. Emma was the first to walk. One afternoon, she let go of the sofa and wobbled toward Ji-hoon. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. Then toppled into her father's arms, giggling. Ji-hoon hugged his daughter and spun her through the air, laughter filling the room. Every weekend, the family went to the park. It was a new habit, something ordinary families did. But for Ji-hoon and Maya, it was something they once thought they could never have. That afternoon, Ji-hoon was pushing Ethan and Emma on the swings, the babies squealing with laughter every time the swings flew high. Maya sat on the grass nearby, filming every moment. She watched Ji-hoon, a man who had once been the most feared Korean mafia boss in Los Angeles, now pushing his children on swings with a bright smile. No one in the park knew who he was. To them, he was just an ordinary father playing with his kids. And that was exactly what Ji-hoon wanted. When the babies grew tired, Ji-hoon set them in the stroller and sat beside Maya on the grass. He looked toward the sunset painting, the sky orange and pink. I used to think power was everything, he said softly. I used to think owning Los Angeles, owning the Kang Empire, was the peak of life. He turned to look at Maya, then at Ethan and Emma, sleeping peacefully in the stroller. I was wrong. This is everything. That evening, after the babies were asleep, Ji-hoon and Maya sat together on the porch. Ji-hoon's voice trembled, something rare for him. Maya. She turned and saw a small velvet box in his hand. Her heart skipped. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, with a small stone and words engraved inside the band. Maya lifted the ring and read, Ethan, Emma, Maya. 3 names, 3 hearts. Everything that mattered most to Ji-hoon. You gave me a family when I didn't deserve one, Ji-hoon said, voice thick with emotion. You gave birth to my children. You raised them alone, and you still named our son after me, even after I abandoned you. You forgave me when I didn't deserve forgiveness. He took her hand and looked into her eyes. Now I want to be with you forever, not for an alliance, not out of duty, not for any reason except one. I love you, Maya. I love you more than my own life. Will you marry me? Maya looked at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Then louder. Yes, Ji-hoon, I will. Ji-hoon slid the ring onto her finger, then kissed her, a kiss full of love and promise. When they pulled apart, Maya did something that startled him. She placed his hand on her belly. Ji-hoon looked at her, confused. Maya smiled, eyes shining. You won't miss this one. Ji-hoon's heart seemed to stop. He looked down at his hand on her stomach, then back up into her eyes. The truth crashed over him like a wave. She was pregnant. You? He couldn't speak. Maya nodded, tears of joy falling. 10 weeks. I wanted to wait until today to tell you, Ji-hoon cried. He pulled Maya into his arms, kissed her forehead, kissed her cheek, then dropped to his knees and kissed her belly. This time, I'll be with you from the first day, he whispered to the baby who hadn't been born yet. I won't miss another moment. A week later, the whole family went to the park. Ethan chased butterflies, bright laughter spilling across the grass. Emma sat picking flowers, choosing the prettiest ones to give her mother. Ji-hoon stood behind Maya, arms wrapped around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. They both watched their children play, saying nothing, simply letting this peaceful moment fill them. No one in the park knew the man holding his wife had once been the most feared Korean mafia boss in Los Angeles. No one knew how much suffering they'd lived through, how much separation, how much blood and tears it had taken to reach this ordinary moment. To the outside world, they were just a normal family, enjoying a weekend afternoon. And that was exactly what they wanted. The most dangerous man in Los Angeles had discovered that real power didn't live in the bullets he fired or the empires he built. Real power lived in 3 hearts, soon to be 4, that had forgiven him and given him a reason to become better. Some stories end with dramatic battles, but the most beautiful love stories end with ordinary days and the promise of countless ordinary days still to come. If this story moved you, drop a comment telling us, would you have given Ji-hoon a second chance? Share this with someone who believes even the most broken people can find redemption. And subscribe because some secrets are worth waiting for.